So the January 6th Congressional Committee investigating the Capitol attack just subpoenaed 5 members of Congress to testify about the insurrection. What could possibly go wrong? Or right? Let's talk about that. Because justice matters. Hey all, Glenn Kirshner here. So the January 6th Congressional Committee has finally gotten around to subpoenaing some of its own. Kevin McCarthy, Jim Jordan, and 3 other members of Congress. And those 5 representatives are now in a nice little trick bag. We'll talk about that in a minute, but first of all, here's the new reporting from Politico. January 6 panel subpoenas McCarthy, Jordan, 3 other GOP lawmakers. The subpoenas target some of former President Donald Trump's closest allies in the House, demanding testimony by the last week of May. And the fabulous 5 consist of Kevin McCarthy, Jim Jordan, Andy Biggs, Scott Perry, and Mo Brooks. Now, if these 5 members of Congress violate the subpoenas, decide to be in contempt of Congress, or maybe I should say when these 5 men violate the subpoenas, what do they risk? How much time do you have? Because it will take some time to go through it, but I'm going to try to roll quickly through some of the possible consequences. Now, some of the obvious, even if not all that ominous consequences include they could be voted in contempt and referred to the Department of Justice for criminal prosecution for contempt of Congress. Why do I say that that's not such an ominous consequence? Well, 4 people have been voted in contempt and referred to DOJ for criminal prosecution, and only one, Steve Bannon, has actually been indicted. And that is why we remain on contempt of Congress indictment watch. That's right, we're still on indictment watch for Mark Meadows, Peter Navarro, Dan Scavino. Now, I certainly hope and frankly even suspect that the reason DOJ has not yet indicted these 3 individuals is because DOJ is intending to roll them into a larger, farther-reaching, more inclusive conspiracy indictment, conspiracy to defraud or commit crimes against the United States. That's certainly what should happen because, justice matters, but we're not there yet. We're not at the end, so stick with me for a few minutes while we go through some of the other consequences of these 5 members of Congress violating the newly issued congressional subpoenas. Another consequence, if Kevin McCarthy and the other members of Congress who have been subpoenaed violate those subpoenas, well, instead of being voted in contempt and referred to DOJ for criminal prosecution, maybe Congress would finally use its lawful, constitutional power of inherent contempt to arrest those members of Congress who were in contempt by violating the subpoenas and compelling their testimony. That would kind of be just desserts, no? If the first time Congress, pulled out of its arsenal, its lawful weapon of inherent contempt of Congress, to use it against members of Congress. And of course, if Kevin McCarthy argues that either you can't subpoena members of Congress, or if you do, you can't use inherent contempt to compel their testimony, well, then when and if the Republicans take control of the House, Kevin McCarthy can't be heard to argue in the future that members of Congress can be subpoenaed, or inherent contempt can be used to compel testimony. Can he? Of course he can, because nobody expects consistency from Kevin McCarthy. Hypocrisy is his middle name, and he bears that middle name proudly. Let's move on to another consequence, and this is probably the granddaddy of all consequences. If McCarthy and Jordan and the rest of them violate the lawfully issued congressional subpoenas, if they refuse to give testimony about Donald Trump's crimes, well then, in a very real sense, they're covering up Donald Trump's crimes. What does that mean? Well, it supplies evidence that they are actually co-conspirators in Donald Trump's ongoing efforts to overturn the results of the 2020 presidential election. Or they could be viewed as accessories after the fact. That's a federal crime. When you're helping somebody get away with their crimes, you're an accessory after the fact. And that's what they would be doing if they refused to testify pursuant to a lawful congressional subpoena. And then there is another crime in play. We haven't talked that much about it, but it's called misprision of a felony. And here is how the federal code defines that crime, misprision of a felony. It's 18 United States Code Section 4, and it reads, "Whoever, having knowledge of the actual commission of a felony cognizable by a court of the United States, conceals and does not, as soon as possible, make known the same to some judge or other person in civil or military authority under the United States, shall be fined or imprisoned for not more than 3 years." So why is the federal crime of misprision of a felony directly in play now? Because it says, if you know somebody's committed a felony against the United States that is cognizable by a judge of the United States, and you don't report it or you cover it up, well, that's called misprision of a felony. Remember back a few weeks ago when a federal judge in California, David Carter, made a finding, made a ruling that Donald Trump, together with John Eastman, committed federal crimes. He found by a preponderance of the evidence, 51% more likely than not, which is more evidence than you need to arrest and indict somebody. That's just probable cause. Judge Carter found that Donald Trump and John Eastman were in a conspiracy to commit crimes against the United States or to defraud the United States. And he also found that Donald Trump committed the crime of obstructing an official proceeding, namely the certification of Joe Biden's win. So what do we know? We know those crimes are cognizable by a judge of the United States because we already have a written ruling to that effect. So wouldn't it be misprision of a felony, failing to report or otherwise covering up those crimes, if McCarthy and Jordan and Perry and Brooks and Biggs decided to be in contempt of Congress rather than comply with a lawfully issued congressional subpoena? Looks like misprision of a felony to me. Also looks like accessory after the fact. Also looks like they are criminal co-conspirators with Donald Trump in his conspiracy to defraud or commit crimes against the United States, what we call a 371 conspiracy. So many crimes to choose from. And we will know soon enough which and how many of those crimes these 5 members of Congress will commit if, should we say when, they refuse to comply with subpoenas seeking information about an attempt to overthrow our democracy. Let's hope they have a change of heart, fully cooperate, be forthcoming, testify about Donald Trump's crimes. Let's hope, because justice matters. Friends, as always, please stay safe, please stay tuned, and I look forward to talking with you all again tomorrow.